This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by Dipstick Vapes, makers of the innovative Dipper Vaporizer, which can be used as both a traditional pack-and-go vape pen as well as what can best be described as a magic vape straw, which is able to hoover up concentrates directly from dish. Swing over to dipstickvapes.com to check out the Dipper yourself and to see just how cool and versatile a tool it is for the discerning cannabis consumer. And when you buy your Dipper, use the discount code MJ Today to not only save yourself 15% off, but to also generate a donation to our friends over at Students for Sensible Drug Policy in the amount that you saved. That's dipstickvapes.com, discount code MJ Today. Big thanks to everyone over at Dipstick Vapes for the support that makes today's news possible. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, July 24th, 2018, and you're tuned in to episode 534 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story today is news of an enormous round of funding just announced by cannabis company Acreage Holdings, which made big headlines in April after former Republican Speaker of the House John Boehner joined the company's board of directors. Yesterday, Acreage announced that it had raised $119 million in funding from a network of high net worth individuals and family-controlled investment funds. It is, as far as I know, the largest single round of funding by a U.S.-based marijuana company. Acreage has a number of cannabis businesses in 13 states and says it will use the proceeds from this round to fund its current operations and for planned expansions into new cannabis markets like Arizona and Michigan. In a quick bit of disclosure, we have a very tangential relationship with Acreage that I feel compelled to mention. MJ Today Media just took on the production of the Green Rush podcast, which is run by the communications firm KCSA, which is a client of Acreage. But that played no part at all in the call to make this today's top story. The $119 million bills attached to the deal was more than enough for that. Leafly's Haley Fox put together a great longer form piece looking at how things are going in Los Angeles as the city works to implement a social equity program for cannabis entrepreneurs that, from the sounds of it, isn't going super smoothly. LA's marijuana social equity program was conceived of as a way to help counteract some of the glaring racial disparities inherent in the government's war on marijuana and offered people living in areas with historically high cannabis arrest rates or who have been arrested themselves for marijuana charges a step ahead in the licensing process. But as Haley's story finds, the program has been hit by delays that have caused some equity program participants to have to shell out thousands of dollars in unnecessary holding costs. There are a lot of things being blamed for the program's holdup, but the most prominent seems to be the lack of adequate funding for both the social equity program itself and the city's Department of Cannabis Regulation, which has been very slow to staff up. Give this one a full read. We wrap up today's top stories with some not great news out of Oklahoma, where yesterday the state's Secretary of State told reporters that it's unlikely that a proposed ballot measure to ask voters if they want to legalize adult-use cannabis will end up on the fall ballot, even if supporters are able to turn in enough valid signatures in support. Oklahoma's Secretary of State James Williamson said that procedural requirements will keep the measure off November's ballot, and the best that marijuana activists could hope for was placement on the 2020 ballot or a special election. Oklahoma requires around 124,000 valid signatures to be submitted for a successful ballot placement, and adult-use cannabis supporters say they're right under the 120,000 signature mark right now, with the August 8th deadline for submissions still a couple weeks out. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Dipstick Vapes, makers of the innovative Dipper Vaporizer. Are you carrying the Dipper at your dispensary or head shop? If not, you really need to get on that, as the Dipper will fly off your shelves as your customers learn about how cool and functional it is as a consumption device. In its default resting state, the Dipper works just like any other top quality pack-and-go vape pen, but it doesn't stop there. With a quick swap of the Dipper's ceramic tip, it transforms into something that can be used to vape up concentrates directly, as if you were a cannabis hummingbird. Bluebird. Your customers will get it right away and reward your insight with boosted Dipper sales. Get on the Dipper retail train today by opening up dipstickvapes.com and clicking over to their wholesalers page. Your bank account will be glad that you did. And don't forget, if you want to buy a Dipper yourself today, use the discount code MJ today to save yourself 15% off the cost of the already affordable Dipper and to generate a donation to SSDP in that same amount. That's dipstickvapes.com, discount code MJ today. All right, time for the Blitz. Picking up a storyline we covered yesterday in Vermont about the issue of delivery services popping up that offer free cannabis that just so happens to come in $40 glass jars. Yesterday, the Attorney General of Vermont issued a legal advisory warning Green Mountain staters that the act of sham transactions involving so-called free cannabis that comes attached with overpriced bags or jars or delivery fees is illegal. In the advisory posted, Vermont Attorney General T.J. Donovan wrote, quote, "Any transfer of marijuana for money, barter, or other legal consideration remains illegal under Vermont law," unquote. You can pop over to 7 Days VT to check out the full advisory yourself. Leafly has another good longer form piece up today with a story examining some of the numbers in California for cities who have chosen to legalize and tax marijuana sales. Leafly highlights cities like Sacramento and San Diego, which brought in $2.9 million and $2.26 million in cannabis taxes, respectively, through the first 6 months of the year, and points out that overall state marijuana revenues are around 1/6 of early projections, mostly due to the high number of Golden State cities and towns that have chosen to ban marijuana sales. Tom Angel of our Marijuana Moments picked up on a very cool report published yesterday by the Cato Institution that estimates that ending the global war on drugs and installing a system of taxation and regulation would generate more than $100 billion in taxes and fees. The study was conducted by Jeffrey Myron, a researcher at Harvard University, and nicely parsed out statewide numbers for how tax money would be generated by legalizing all drugs, just marijuana, and cocaine and heroin. A good one to read in full. With another marijuana moment is Kyle Yeager, who did a bunch of valuable legwork in compiling a story about the increased use of Facebook ads by prominent national politicians like Senators Cory Booker of New Jersey and Kirsten Gillibrand of New York to proclaim their support of cannabis law reform. Marijuana Business Daily's chart of the week plots out the rise of Maryland's medical marijuana program, which saw $1.8 million in sales in December of last year, but that rose to $8.73 million as of mid-June. Canadian marijuana giant Aurora Cannabis just announced that it would start covering the costs of medical marijuana for its employees under their healthcare package. The new policy will go into effect on August 1st and will allow qualified patient employees to be compensated for the costs of medical marijuana. This is pretty awesome news that made me ask why more industry companies aren't doing the same. And finally for today, we end with a story that I hope each and every listener opens up and dives into fully. Marijuana.com nicely covers a police raid in Detroit, Michigan last month on a state legal marijuana cultivation operation that's owned by former NBA basketball player Al Harrington. The early June raid led to the arrest of 6 of Mr. Harrington's employees, none of whom are white, and all of whom had their cars impounded in the process. This happened despite the fact that the grow site was as city and state legal as possible and well known to Detroit officials. Mr. Harrington pegged the reasoning behind the raids on good old-fashioned racism, which is one of our industry's bigger ingrained challenges to overcome. A court hearing on the case is next scheduled for the end of this month, so we'll make sure to report back on how things go. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Dipstick Vapes, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the listeners' ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.